Everyone in town stopped breathing when he lifted the veil. Then someone laughed. Then another. And before the church doors closed that morning, Nathan Carter thought he had made the worst mistake of his life. If stories about courage, second chances, and seeing people for who they really are mean something to you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. There are many stories about love. Fewer about learning how to deserve it. Stay with me until the end, because the last choice Nathan makes changes more than his own life. Nathan Carter was 34 years old when loneliness finally became louder than pride. He lived in a weather-beaten farmhouse on the far edge of Willow Creek, a small prairie town where every road carried dust in summer and mud in winter. The house had belonged to his parents before him. His father had built the porch with his own hands. His mother had planted white roses near the fence. Both had been gone for 6 years, and since then the place had become quieter every season. The barn leaned a little more every winter. The kitchen clock sounded louder every night. He had not always been alone. At 27 he had nearly married a local girl named Clara. Everyone had expected it. They had gone to school together, sat beside each other in church, shared summer fairs and autumn dances. Then one spring Clara left Willow Creek with a traveling salesman from the city. She left behind a note so short it seemed crueler than anger. "I want a bigger life." Nathan read those words until the paper softened in his hands. After that, something in him folded inward. He worked. He slept. He spoke when spoken to. His neighbors called him decent, steady, dependable. No one called him happy. Years passed. His fields of wheat were enough to keep him fed but never enough to make him prosperous. He repaired his own fence posts, mended old shirts, and sold what grain he could. Every Sunday after church, families gathered in clusters while Nathan nodded politely and walked home alone. Children grew into adults. New babies were born. The town moved forward while his life stood still. The idea of a mail-order bride did not come to him in romance. It came in exhaustion. One November evening, while waiting for his boots to dry near the stove, he found an old newspaper left behind at Miller's General Store. In the back pages was a small advertisement from an agency that introduced women seeking marriage to men willing to build honest homes. He almost laughed at first. It sounded desperate. It sounded foolish. It sounded like something lonely men did when they had run out of courage. Then he kept reading. For 3 nights he thought about it. On the 4th, he wrote a letter. He did not lie. He said he was not rich. He said he owned a small farm and a worn house. He said he rose before dawn and slept after dark. He said he wanted kindness more than beauty, honesty more than charm. He sealed the envelope before he could change his mind. A month later a reply arrived. The agency sent several written introductions. Most were polite, careful, almost rehearsed. Then one letter stood apart. "My name is Eleanor Whitaker. I am 32 years old. I was raised by my grandmother. I sew, bake, and keep a household well. I believe hard years can make a person gentler if they do not make them bitter. I do not need luxury. I need respect. If you are a truthful man, I will answer truthfully." Nathan read her words twice, then 3 times. He wrote back. The letters continued through winter. They spoke of practical things at first. The weather, work, food, how many rooms were in the house, whether there were books, whether the nearest church was walking distance. Then, little by little, the letters became something else. Eleanor told him she liked thunderstorms if she could watch them from indoors. She admitted she cried at funerals even for people she barely knew. She once kept an injured robin alive through a January storm. Nathan told her his mother had taught him to make potato soup. He confessed he still talked aloud to his father sometimes while fixing the barn. He admitted he feared silence more than hardship. One letter arrived with a sentence he could not forget. "People often mistake being alone for being strong. Sometimes the bravest thing is allowing someone to stand beside you." He read that sentence by lantern light until the flame burned low. By spring, the agency arranged their meeting. They would marry the same day she arrived. That was not unusual. It was practical, respectable, and proper under the circumstances. There was one detail Nathan never thought much about. He never asked for a photograph. He told himself it did not matter. He wanted character. He wanted companionship. He wanted a human soul, not a portrait. On the morning of the wedding, Willow Creek gathered at the church with the restless excitement of people hungry for a story. The women whispered behind gloves. The men pretended not to care while standing close enough to hear every rumor. Nathan stood near the altar, his palms damp. He had barely slept. His collar felt too tight. Every small sound made him look toward the doors. Then they opened. A woman stepped inside. She was taller than he expected. Broad-shouldered, full-bodied. Her frame filled the doorway so completely that for one stunned second the entire church fell silent. Her dress was plain ivory. Her dark hair was pinned neatly back. Her face was not delicate in the way town people praised. It was strong, thoughtful, and alive with visible uncertainty. Her hands clutched a small bouquet of wildflowers. And then came the laughter. Not from everyone, but enough. A sharp little laugh from the back pew. Then another whisper. Then someone muttered, "Good heavens." Nathan felt heat rise in his face. He heard every sound, every glance, every judgment, and in that terrible moment, instead of seeing Eleanor, he saw only what everyone else saw. He saw surprise. He saw difference. He saw the town watching him. Then he looked at her face. She had heard them too. He could tell because her chin lifted a little higher, but her eyes had changed. There was pain there, old and familiar, the kind of pain a person learns to carry quietly because they have carried it too long to protest. She kept walking. Each step felt like courage. When she reached him, the minister cleared his throat. Nathan could barely speak. He hated himself for what he was feeling. Not because he found her unattractive, though he had expected something else. No, what sickened him was realizing how quickly he had become smaller than the man he thought he was. The vows began. His voice shook. Hers did not. When it ended, the church emptied with unusual speed. Outside, whispers traveled faster than wind. Nathan and Eleanor rode home in silence. The farmhouse looked smaller somehow when they arrived. He carried her case inside. She stood in the doorway of the kitchen, looking around as if measuring the life she had entered. "I can leave tomorrow," she said quietly. He turned. "What? If you regret this, I can leave tomorrow." He stared at her. "You crossed half the country." "Yes. Why would you say that?" "Because I know that look." Her voice remained calm, but every word landed heavily. "I have seen it all my life. Surprise first, then disappointment, then kindness out of obligation. I would rather hear truth." Nathan sat down slowly. "I don't know what to say." "Then say nothing you do not mean." That night he lay awake listening to the unfamiliar sound of another person in the house. He heard her footsteps once in the kitchen. Then silence. He thought of the church, of the laughter, of her face. In the morning he found fresh bread on the table. The floors had been swept. His shirts, which had been sitting in a basket for 2 weeks, were neatly folded. He found her outside repairing a broken garden fence. "You don't have to do that," he said. She looked up. It needed doing. That was Eleanor. She did not ask for permission to be useful. She simply stepped into what needed care. Days passed. Then weeks. She learned the rhythm of the farm quickly. She kept accounts better than he did. She noticed which hens were not laying. She organized the pantry. She stitched the torn kitchen curtains. She sang softly while working, never loudly enough to invite attention. At first their conversations remained cautious. Then one evening rain trapped them indoors. He found her reading one of his mother's old books. "You like poetry?" he asked. "I like honest words." He sat down across from her. "Were you disappointed?" he asked. She looked at him over the page. "About what?" "When you saw me." A small smile touched her mouth. "A little." He blinked. "You were thinner than I expected." For a second he stared, then laughed. It surprised him so much that she laughed too. Something changed that night. Not all at once, but enough. He began seeing details he had missed at first. The steadiness of her hands. The warmth of her voice. The way she listened with her whole attention. The way children who first stared at her soon drifted closer because she never treated them as interruptions. And still the town talked. At Miller's store he overheard 2 men joking that Nathan had ordered double the wife. He nearly swung at them. Instead he left. But Eleanor knew. "I heard," she said that evening. He waited for anger. Instead she shrugged. People who cannot imagine kindness often turn surprise into cruelty. "How do you bear it?" She looked at him for a long moment. I stopped asking strangers to tell me who I am. That sentence stayed with him. Summer came hard and dry. Then disaster followed. A storm rolled across the prairie in late July, violent and fast. Wind tore shingles from the roof. Lightning struck the old north barn. By midnight flames were eating through years of work. Nathan ran into the rain with buckets. It was hopeless. Then he heard Eleanor shouting. She had opened the animal pens. She drove the horses out through smoke and sparks. She led the frightened milk cow by hand. When one calf bolted back toward the fire, she ran after it. Nathan's heart stopped. He reached her just as part of the roof collapsed behind them. They stumbled into the mud-soaked, coughing, shaking. By dawn the barn was gone. Nathan sat in the wet grass with his head in his hands. "It's finished," he said. "No," Eleanor answered. "It's damaged." He looked up at her. "The wheat will barely cover this. I can't rebuild." "Yes, you can." "How?" "We begin." He almost laughed at the simplicity of it. But she meant it. That afternoon she spread papers across the kitchen table. She had been keeping detailed household accounts for months. She knew exactly what they had, what they owed, what could be sold, what could wait. "I thought you only sewed and baked," he said. "My grandmother ran a boarding house with 6 rooms and 1 stubborn mule. She taught me numbers." For the first time since the fire, hope entered the room. The next morning something unexpected happened. Neighbors arrived. First old Mr. Hollis with timber. Then the Baker boys. Then women from church carrying food. Then half the town. Even some who had laughed. Nathan stood speechless. At their front was Mrs. Miller. "We came to help," she said. "Your wife asked for no charity. Only hands." He turned toward Eleanor. "You asked them." "No," she said. "I told them what happened. Then I asked whether Willow Creek was the sort of town that watched people drown." For 3 weeks they rebuilt. And people began seeing what Nathan had begun to see. Eleanor organized workers, soothed arguments, fed exhausted hands, and somehow remembered every child's name. When old Mrs. Talbot fainted in the heat, Eleanor was the one who caught her. When 2 men argued over measurements, Eleanor settled it with a glance and a better plan. By the end of August, people stopped whispering when she walked by. By September, they greeted her first. One Sunday after church, little Hannah Miller slipped her hand into Eleanor's and asked if she would help make a dress for the Harvest Festival. Nathan watched Eleanor's face soften. He understood then how much of her life had been spent standing just outside belonging. That night he found her crying quietly on the porch. "What happened?" She wiped her eyes. "Nothing." He sat beside her. "Tell me." She stared out toward the fields. "I was engaged once." He waited. He left 2 weeks before the wedding. He said he wanted a wife people would admire. Not one they would talk about. Nathan felt something cold settle in his chest. "I'm sorry. I survived." "Yes," he said, "but you should never have had to." She turned toward him then. "And you, Clara." He looked down. "I thought losing her proved something was wrong with me. And now," he was quiet for a long moment. "Now I think pain simply found us both before kindness did." She cried harder then, but this time she leaned against him. He put his arm around her carefully, as if holding something precious and breakable. Autumn arrived golden and full. At the Harvest Festival, Nathan stood near the square while lanterns glowed overhead. He watched Eleanor laughing with a circle of women. Children crowded around her. Her cheeks were flushed. Her hair had come loose in the wind. And suddenly he understood something with startling clarity. He loved her, not in the way stories had taught him to expect. Not thunder. Not instant certainty. It was deeper. It was respect that had become affection, affection that had become trust, and trust that had quietly become love. He crossed the square. "Would you dance with me?" he asked. Her eyes widened. In public. In public. They stepped onto the worn wooden platform while fiddles played. He was not graceful. Neither was she. But they laughed like 2 people who had stopped apologizing for existing. A few months later, the minister visited the farm. Nathan had asked him to come. Eleanor looked puzzled until they stood again in the little church where they had first married. Only a few people were there this time. Family, neighbors, friends. Nathan turned to her. "The first time," he said, his voice rough, "I stood here thinking about what others saw. I was afraid, and I was smaller than the man I wanted to be. Her eyes filled. But if I could choose again, knowing exactly who would walk through those doors, I would choose you before anyone. The church was silent. I didn't love you the day we met, he continued. But I learned you. I saw you. And now I thank God every morning that it was you. By the time he finished, there were tears in half the pews. Even Eleanor was openly crying. So, he said with a trembling smile, would you marry me again? She laughed through tears. Yes. This time, when he kissed her, no one laughed. Years later people still told the story of the day Nathan Carter ordered a bride without a picture. At first they told it for the surprise. Later they told it for what came after. The woman who rebuilt the barn. The woman who taught half the town better manners. The woman who turned a quiet farmhouse into a home full of bread, books, music, and eventually 3 children who inherited her steady eyes and his stubbornness. And Nathan, he learned the lesson that changed his life. Loneliness had once convinced him to search for someone. Love taught him to truly see who had arrived. Sometimes the greatest mistake of your life is only the doorway to the greatest mercy. And sometimes the person the world teaches you not to notice becomes the person who saves you. If this story stayed with you, if it reminded you that hearts can be wiser than first impressions, like this video and subscribe to the channel. There are many stories in this world, but the ones worth keeping are the ones that teach us how to become better people.